thank you so much for inviting me here today. As a proud mom of 2 UGA alums and 1 Terry alumnus, it's just such a pleasure to be with you, and especially to be able to talk to young people like you who are so passionate about your careers and what you're doing. So thanks so much. I have a lot of experience in my life, and I'm going to share some stories with you today that I hope might just help some of you as you go through your journeys, and I'm just so excited to be able to do that. When I learned that today's theme was about resiliency, I couldn't think of a better way to get started than this video. Because when you think about the resiliency of Harrison, it's like, I should just sit down. Because that is resiliency. And we have just an amazing vantage point at Children's to be able to see kids like him and what they do. And it's unbelievably inspiring, as you can imagine. Kids like Harrison really keep you humble. They keep you grateful. And they've taught me so much about how do you face life's challenges and how do you do that and keep it all in perspective. I can promise you that any day that I'm feeling a little overwhelmed by something going on at work, all I have to do is walk down the halls of our hospital and very quickly you put things in perspective, as you might imagine when you meet kids like this. And in Children's Hospital, we have just such a unique view of resiliency because we see kids that face a diagnosis that I promise you would stop any of us in our tracks. But the first thing kids want to know is, when can I go back to school? Or when can I play baseball? Or when can I do whatever they want to do? We see parents who overnight have to learn this whole new language about machines and medications while they're also trying to balance birthday celebrations and keeping family traditions alive. And then we have our staff, our wonderful nurses and doctors and caregivers who have to sometimes deliver really hard news that they're going to take home with them at night. Our logo, which hopefully some of you have seen, has this boy and girl in it. And the boy and girl are hope and will, very intentionally. Because, anytime a child, I always tell everybody, I hope you never have to come to Children's because that means you have a sick child. But we have to be the very best that we can be if you do need us. And so, we treat kids that will come, have a minor illness, and hopefully we'll be able to go home. And then we treat a lot of kids like Harrison who are going to have lifelong challenges. And so for all those kids, what we've really learned is the importance of hope and the importance of the will to get through whatever they are. And I think those are really 2 core principles that are so important for all of us when we think about resiliency. Witnessing the level of resiliency that I have in my life, and especially my career at Children's, has really taught me so much. And at Children's, our mission is doing everything possible to make anything possible for the precious kids that we care for. So you see kids like Harrison, and it's like, we're going to do everything we can to enable that child to have the most amazing life that he could possibly have. So as I thought about the opportunity to speak to you, I thought that I might just share some of my experiences and learnings, and that maybe some of them might help you along the way, and you might even think about them sometimes when you're facing your own challenges, which you will in life, I promise you. So you may wonder, how in the world did any accountants in the room? Yay! Terry has a great accounting school. How in the world did an accountant end up as CEO of Children's Healthcare of Atlanta? So I started my career in Atlanta in the 1980s with this company called Home Depot. It was very young back in those days. As a freshly minted accountant, our offices, you get out of school and you're so excited. Our offices were in an old Winn-Dixie on Powers Ferry Road. It was really a terrible environment to work in. So, I stayed there for a couple of years and then I decided to move on. Now, too bad I didn't stay at Home Depot because my name might be on the new hospital instead of Arthur Blank's. But as Bernie Marcus once told me, God had a different plan for you. So I met Arthur Blank and Bernie Marcus when I was in my 20s, and Home Depot was a really young company. I got reacquainted with them many years later, and both of them have had just such a major influence on my life. They've also given hundreds of millions of dollars to Children's Healthcare of Atlanta, and I do mean hundreds of millions of dollars. So lesson number one for all of you, you never know who you're going to meet along the way and how they will impact your life later. So always try to make a positive impression. After a couple of years at Home Depot, I left and I went to work for a company called American Medical International. It was publicly traded, for-profit. They owned hospitals across the country. And this was really my introduction into healthcare. So at AMI, they moved you around all the time. And so I'd been there for about a year, and they came to me and they said, we'd like to offer you a CFO job in Boca Raton, Florida. I was like, I'm 27 years old. I am living the life here in Atlanta. Has anybody been to Boca Raton? No offense if anyone is from there. But there are not many young people. So I decided that I did not want to take them up on that offer. And one of my bosses at AMI had left, and she had gone to work as the CFO of this little children's hospital, Scottish Rite Children's Hospital. And she called me and she said, why don't you come over here and just try it? Like, you don't want to move to Boca Raton. Come over here, stay for a couple of years, and then you can go. I was like, yeah, what the heck? So I did, thinking that I would be there for a couple of years. So another story about this, AMI, where I was leaving, was just flush with money. It was that was in the heyday of healthcare. Our headquarters were at the corner of Camden and Rodeo Drive in Beverly Hills. So think about that. That's where I'm coming from. So my first day on my new job at Scottish Rite, my new boss walks in. She puts a box of checks in front of me, and she says, there's $600,000 worth of checks here. We only have $400,000 in the bank, and I need you to decide which ones we're going to pay. So stunned me, was sitting there. Then she turned around and she said, I never said it was going to be easy. And she walked out the door. Lesson number two, be sure to do thorough due diligence on any company that you are going to work for. Cash is really critical. I'm an accountant, and I took this job not doing that. So for all of you, be sure you do that. Sadly, this woman who recruited me passed away. And the then CEO came to me and said, would you like to apply for this job? We're doing a national search. At this point, I was 29 years old, and I was like, sure. Which I look back on that and think that was really hilarious that I threw my hat in the ring. Somehow I interviewed and got the job. So I would say that's lesson number three. You have to take charge of your career, and sometimes you just have to go for it. You just never know. And nobody's going to offer you a job that you don't let somebody know that you're interested in. So roll the clock forward. I was in my new role as CFO at the ripe old age of 29. I had zero experience. And IT reported to me. So we implemented a new computer system, and it was an absolute disaster. And I was responsible. I was accountable for it ultimately. So despite everything that I did, we just could not get it to work. And by getting it to work, I mean, we could not drop a bill. So cash flow, I already told you we had cash problems, cash flow went to zero. I just felt so defeated. So I met with the then chairman of the board of the hospital, and I said, look, I've done the best I can. I've worked with our team. We just can't seem to fix this. And I really think you all should consider hiring a more experienced CFO. And he looked at, I was ready. I was like out of there. I'm like, I can't do this job. He looked at me and he said, no way. He said, I'm an executive at the Coca-Cola company, and I'm pretty good at recognizing talent. And I think you're going to learn from this experience. You're going to fix this problem, and you're going to be a lot stronger as a result of that. He went on to tell me that at the Coca-Cola company, somebody here said they worked for Coke. At the Coca-Cola company, when we're interviewing people, we ask them to describe a gut-wrenching experience and how they got through it and how they learned from it. And that's what you're experiencing right now. And I have all the faith in the world that you're going to fix the problem and that you will be much stronger as a result of this experience. His leadership taught me a lot. What he said to me that day was a pivotal point in my career. And who knows where I would be today had I left that job. So the next lesson, number 4, gut-wrenching experiences will make you better if you let them. And I promise you, you will have some of those gut-wrenching experiences in your career. So I've now been at Children's for 40 years, which is a long time. My daughter told me that was very sad, that I've been at the same place for so long. I think she thinks I can't get another job. So I've been controller, I've been chief financial officer, chief operating officer, and I've been the CEO since 2008, and have been part of putting the system together and really watching it grow from 2 sleepy little children's hospitals to one of the national leaders in pediatric healthcare. And as you heard, over 1 million visits per year. I could go on and on with just kind of story after story of what's taught me so many valuable lessons, but I chose one more recent challenge that I thought might help you with thinking about resilience. In fact, if someone would have put this in front of me as a case study, I think I would have been like, I'm just throwing in the towel. So you'll relate to some of this. Have any of you seen the new hospital? It's at the corner of North Druid Hills and 85. Well, it's magnificent. So if any of you would like to come see it, it's something that we're very proud of. So starting about 10 years ago, we were running out of beds for the kids that needed our care. And we're the only level 1 pediatric trauma center in the state of Georgia. We take care of most of the kids, the sickest kids with cancer, heart disease, serious orthopedic issues, neurosciences. So we have to make sure that we have the beds to care for kids. And our board really challenged us. They said, we want you to think boldly, and we want you to build something that will be here for future generations of Georgia's kids. We need a healthcare campus that can make sure that every child in the state of Georgia who needs our expert care can get that care. So it was a pretty tall order. So after years of planning, we had to assemble 78 acres. Some of you here who are in real estate, I get kidded all the time that I'm one of the largest real estate developers in Atlanta, unintentionally. But we assembled 78 acres at the corner of North Druid Hills and I-85 to build the hospital. And we had to design it from ground up. And then we had to figure out how to pay for $2.2 billion. We finally broke ground. We broke ground February of 2020. Does anybody remember what happened in March of 2020? A global pandemic. Something, honestly, that I don't think we could have even made up in our worst nightmare. So as we faced the pandemic, we certainly had big worries, the least of which was this plot of dirt. We didn't know what this was. We didn't know how it was going to impact children. We were worried about our patients. We were worried about our staff. We had to stay open 24/7 when other businesses were closing. We were running out of masks. We were running out of supplies. We were running out of what we needed to have to protect our staff. I vividly remember talking to our head of infectious disease, which is this brilliant doctor. And I said, "What is this?" And she said, "We don't know." Which absolutely shakes you to your core when you're talking to your smartest infectious disease doctors and nobody knew what this pandemic was. So it's kind of, what in the world are we going to do? We pulled together a team. I put our chief medical officer and our chief nursing officer in charge because we needed our best medical minds leading on this initiative. So I think as a leader, I would say that's kind of lesson number 5. Sometimes as the leader, it is your job to figure out who are the best people to put in charge, and you need to put them in charge, and it means you may need to step aside. I was there, I was like, you guys are in charge, I'm here to get you the resources you need, but they were the ones that were expert in what we needed at the time. We faced incredible challenges. It was day by day, honestly, one by one, day by day, we were solving problems. Everything from supplies to masks to you name it. In addition to all those healthcare challenges that we had financial challenges because we had to close all of our elective services. And in a hospital, that's where you make your money. And so we also had to figure out how are we going to pay I think at that time, 12,000 people when they're not working. And we haven't really very little cash flow coming in. So we had to figure that out. Thankfully, COVID did not attack children the way that it did adults in the beginning. 2 years later, it was the worst respiratory surge that we've ever seen. But we used our best talent, our best science, and a lot of grit that really got us through that time. And I would say, boy, did we all learn a lot during that experience. I tried to tell my kids that, and I'd say this is true for all of you, having lived through COVID, I think you are going to be well situated to deal with all kinds of challenges that are going to hit you in your life. Because, I'm old now. That one was one of the worst, I think, for all of us. So another big lesson during COVID is it's really all about the team. And when you're in a crisis, be very gracious to each other because everybody is doing their best in times like that. So back to the swath of dirt on North Druid Hills. While we're dealing with all the other stuff, we still have this going on. But as we face the pandemic, we really now knew how important having this hospital with the capacity to care for the kids that we needed to was. So we miraculously were able to keep building during the pandemic. We've had to make some really big moves. Our board chair, thankfully, was Tommy Holder, who's CEO of Holder Construction. And Tommy was able to sit with us and go, okay, we need to go buy steel. We need to go buy glass. We need to go, lock in everything that we can because he saw what was coming in terms of, the implications of the pandemic. So we solved for how we were going to make sure we had paint, flooring materials, insulation. We pre-ordered equipment. We had to go rent warehouses because we were ordering things so much sooner than we were going to need them. But we were like, we have to do all this or we're going to get so delayed that it's going to be years before we can open this hospital. And I've heard many people say that watching our construction during COVID was inspiring to them because it showed them that there is going to be a tomorrow and that there was hope for the future. So less than 5 years after we broke ground, and despite the pandemic, we were able to open the hospital ahead of target and $130 million under budget. So in September of 2024, after 2 years of logistics planning to be able to move all the kids that we needed to move into the new hospital, we were ready to open. We had planned every minute, down to the second. We had detail after detail, and we had backup plan after backup plan because we knew we had to organize this. We were going to do it on a Sunday morning at 7 o'clock. We had to work with like 8 different jurisdictions, police. 8 churches didn't have services that day so that we could move all these kids from Eggleston over to Arthur and Blank. There was just infinite levels of detail in the planning. So we were presenting our final report to the board in August, and one of our board members joked and said, well, have you planned for a hurricane? And then guess what? A once-in-a-lifetime, late-in-the-season hurricane was predicted to clobber Atlanta the exact same weekend. Hurricane Helene looked ominous. Helene turned right before it got to Atlanta, as you know, and it spared Atlanta, which enabled us to proceed with opening at 7 a.m. on September 28th. And I brought a little video that I thought you might enjoy of the opening. Because of this hospital, a child will take their first step. A child will ring the cancer survivor bell. Because of these halls, millions of children are going to be buckled back in their seatbelts and they're going to return to their homes, their bedrooms, and the ball fields, and the places where they belong.
as magnificent as this facility is, to me the greatest beauty that takes place here is actually within the walls of this hospital. It's the doctors, it's the nurses, it's the support staff, it's the folks who work in the culinary area, who keep the building up and running and clean and operationally. It's all of those things that all done with the care, the love, the peace, the calmness, all the things that are so important to the patients.
Congratulations, everyone, and welcome home.
It was really an incredible day in children's history. We moved over 200 children, many of them very critically ill, some on ECMO, which is heart-lung bypass. And we did that with 65 ambulances. It took 4,000 people and 10 hours, and we had 0 safety events, which was really what we were all striving for. I really stood in awe of what our people had done. So I think the big last lesson is never give up on anything if it's really worth fighting for, because we faced so many challenges getting into the new hospital. When I think back on my career, it truly is those gut-wrenching experiences that I think have made me stronger and have helped me be a better leader. As much as I hated them while I was in the middle of those. But there's one thing that's changed dramatically over my career that I think is really impacting your age group, and that is the rise in mental health challenges. Many of you in this room graduated in the last decade, and your generation has dealt with some really uniquely heavy issues. You were teenagers, some of you, many of you probably, when smartphones became a thing. They became an extension of your hand. At a time when social media really started to rewire how we compare and how we compete. Anxiety and depression have risen sharply over the generations. I think we built powerful tools faster than we helped build the emotional frameworks to deal with some of these tools. We have seen a meteoric rise in mental and behavioral health care issues for kids. And the impacts, sadly, are hitting kids younger and younger every year. For those of you with kids, I would encourage you to check out Raising Resilience. These are resources that we have on our Strong for Life network at Children's. This is what really led our board and our leadership to launch a $500 million investment a few years ago into mental and behavioral health. We recruited one of the country's top leaders, Dr. John Constantino, to lead this effort. And we're really working hard to build a better system of prevention and care for kids who need mental health care services. We're making progress and we're really seeing some improvement in outcomes, but we have a long, long way to go. And a big part of this prevention is teaching kids resilience. So I think resilience matters so much right now, and especially with mental health issues. It's not about toughing it out and ignoring stress. It's really about being taught how you deal with it and how you recognize these pressures before they become a crisis. It's about having tools to regulate your emotions, and it's about asking for help and not being the least bit worried about asking for help if you need it. And I hope that all of you would take advantage of any resources around you that could be helpful in building your own personal resilience. Because I can promise you, none of us have gotten through challenges in life alone. You need others and you need help often. So one of the best parts of my job is hearing stories of our patients and the incredible things that our employees do for them. So I really want to close on a high note. Meet Mary Webb. As you can see, Mary's a proud bulldog. Mary was diagnosed with brain cancer when she was a freshman at North Oconee High School. She experienced a smattering of different symptoms, decline in her vision, which led to diagnosis of 2 brain tumors. Starting at 14 years old, she received 6 rounds of chemotherapy and 30 rounds of radiation. Through her high school experience, it certainly wasn't what Mary and her family had hoped for high school. But her focus on her schoolwork and her attitude never faltered. She spent a lot of time coming to doctor visits in Atlanta. Her family lives in Athens, lots of scans, lots and lots of painful treatments. But through it all, she just continued to excel both academically and with this amazing positive attitude that she has. She was accepted to UGA honors, and she recently returned to Athens as a sophomore, and she is a survivor and she is thriving. So as I near the end of my career, one of the greatest accomplishments that I can point to are stories like Mary's. And just knowing that I was a small part of that. During my career at Children's, the cure rate for childhood cancer has grown from 30% to well over 80% today. And our teams have been a big part of that research and that great success. So I really hope that each of you can find some purpose, whether it's in your job. I've been lucky that the job that I have has such an amazing purpose, but I hope that all of you can find something in your lives that you're passionate about, whether it's your job or some organization that you get involved with that really kind of fills you up from that perspective. And whenever you hit roadblocks, I hope that maybe some of these stories, maybe a little vision of hope and will might be in your heads to help you deal with whatever you are dealing with. We need leadership in this country more than we ever have. And you guys are the future. So I hope you can just take some of this, learn from it, and that you can be the kind of strong leaders that we need for our future. So I'm going to end with the best piece of advice that I was ever given. You can do everything in life, just not at the same time. So thank you all again so much for having me. And I think, are we going to have some Q&A? All right. Anything on your mind? Any questions? It's a quiet group. I'm sure somebody has a question.
Hey Donna, Jack Lemner, on the Alumni Board, graduated in 2019. Question for you about kind of you've got this finance accounting background, right? Now you're coming into, put yourself, when you're coming into children's healthcare. How do you navigate running a business, right? And navigating all the financials that go behind that, but also making sure that you're caring for and doing the right things for all the patients you're serving. So how do you navigate those challenges?
Yeah, it's tough. At Children's, we take care of every child that comes to us. So you never know when a patient walks in the door whether they can pay for it or not. And last year, our uncompensated care was $360 million. That's care we delivered that we did not get paid for. So in such an odd way, I think the fact that I'm an accountant and a finance person is really what's been a big part of the success, because it's a tough financial model and figuring it out is so critical, because we tell all of our doctors and nurses, we don't want you to know who can pay and who can't. We want you to take care of every kid the same way that you would. And so you let us figure that out in the background, and that's really what we have to do. And so, I'm not a clinician. I have great appreciation for our clinicians, but I think what I learned a long time ago is if you don't have resources, you can't live out that mission and you really can't deliver on what it is. So I think it's that. And then really having a strong appreciation for the people. Our values at Children's, we really work hard on culture. And I'm a firm believer that culture eats strategy for lunch. So you really have to focus on your culture. And our culture is all about being passionate about kids and really caring and respecting people. And so in order to do that, we have to have the resources. So it is a big combination of setting the expectations, the culture. And it's weird because I drive people crazy because, I'm an accountant. I mean, checks and balances, show me the results, show me the numbers. I mean, that's what you need to do in healthcare. You need to demonstrate those outcomes. So I think I've been able to bring some of that that's really helped with the discipline that's needed sometimes.
Hi, Donna. So I'm over here.
Yeah, hi.
Thanks, Caitlin. Thank you so much for all your stories. I really loved hearing them. I actually had a question about how the hospital came under budget because I'm in the construction industry. But you said something that I thought was really good, just about culture. And how do you create such a culture of excellence at the hospital with all of the employees?
I think it starts with setting those expectations, but when we hire people, when we're going through the interview process, we're really hiring for people that are going to be a cultural fit. And it doesn't always work, and that's when you then have to make some hard decisions, but it really has to be in everything that you do. And so it's in your, your leadership. You have to make sure that your leadership is living that every day. Your hiring practices, everything you do and how you reinforce it. So it has to be woven really into everything that you do. The question on the how we came in $130 million under budget, I really think it's because Tommy Holder was our board chair. Because Tommy said, concrete's getting ready to go through the roof, steel's going through the roof. We got to lock all this in before it went up. So when things started going down, because right after COVID hit, that's when everything stopped. And he said, go buy everything that you can buy and we'll warehouse it. And then what happened. I mean, costs just went through the roof. To build what we built would probably be well more than double today.
Hey, Donna, my name is Ike Eaglesworth, class of 21, Terry, an alumni board member. I have a question about some of the preventative measures that you mentioned as it pertains to some of the children and the social behavioral health and mental health crises that we're seeing in younger generations. Has SHOA started looking into things such as social prescribing as it pertains to like social determinants of health to help kind of prevent some of those emergency room visits, et cetera, that you all might see?
Yeah, well, certainly there are a lot of kids who live in situations that are contributing to their mental health issues in terms of, if there's a child that doesn't have enough food. And so there's a lot of work that we're doing in terms of social determinants of health. And that's a big, big part of prevention. For kids, there's something called adverse childhood events. And you can really predict, depending on the number of adverse childhood events that a child experiences under age 5 to 8, what their future is going to be. So we spend a lot of time with our advocacy work, working on all types of things there. Some of the examples we've done with prevention, and a UGA professor just did this study of exposure to social media and cell phones under age 14. We worked with the City of Marietta Schools. They have a very innovative superintendent, and when a kid gets to school in the morning, they have to lock their phones away. And we now have researchers studying the positive impacts that they're seeing as a result of that. So that's just one example of prevention. When kids are born, I mean, the plasticity of what's happening in kids' brains from like 0 to, every year, but especially those early years, it's so influential in everything about the future. And so everything you can do to make sure that scaffolding is well supported is just so critically important. So I would say that to all of you. I wish I would have known a lot more than I know today. I mean, John and Brooke might be just brain surgeons if I would have done a better job. I see Brant back there laughing. He knows John. So.
Hey, Donna. Question for you on assembling the land at the hospital. You might not remember, but how many different transactions were there? And from like the time that y'all identified the first parcel or whatever to be closed on the last, how long did that take?
I don't know exactly. There were probably about 12 or 15 different parcels that we had to put together. It probably took us we owned 21 acres, and we started just like buying up stuff, thinking that at some point, this was even before we started planning the new hospital, we were like, this is a really good location. Like if something comes on the market, we ought to buy it. And we did that, but then when we became very intentional about it, it probably took about I'm guessing about 4 years. And as you can imagine, the last few were really expensive because,
The ones that held out.
yeah, the ones that held out. We ended up, we're in the city of Brookhaven, and we had to get everything rezoned. And because of some of the challenges in DeKalb County, we knew that permitting would be easier with the city of Brookhaven, but the city of Brookhaven hadn't come across I-85. So we worked with the city of Brookhaven to get our property, the 78 acres, annexed into the city of Brookhaven, so that we were then working through that jurisdiction for all of the various permitting and whatnot that we had to do. We had to put up a lot of money to fix all the roads around. They're now fixing, you had GDOT, you had federal highway. So we had to work through all of that as well to make sure that once we got the hospital open, the roads would be able to handle the kind of traffic that you'd be seeing in that area. I learned a lot through all of that, for sure. I'm on the Cousins Properties Board, thank goodness. So I started to learn a lot about real estate, but that was definitely one of a lot of things that we got exposed to that we hadn't been before, put it that way.
Rob Cargill over here.
Oh, sorry.
It's all right. You had such a phenomenal career journey. How you built and persevered through all the different challenges that you had to face throughout your career?
I think a lot of it was, just kind of having that just never give up attitude, and always, for some reason, thinking I could do anything, that whatever somebody would throw at me, I would think I could do it. And so I think part of that might just be how I was wired, but, part of it was just saying, I'm not going to give up. Somebody back here.
So hi, Mrs. Hyland. Thank you so much for your presentation. And you'll be on Monica. You'll finish probably in 2027 if everything goes well. And I tried to smash in one question, so many questions. So you mentioned leadership. And I would like to know if you can highlight a couple of skill sets that during your career made you a good leader, or do you think it's very important to become one? And also how you are able to recharge yourself after every single day seeing those kids suffering. So those would be my questions.
Yeah. I think the most important thing about leadership is, and you have to get results. It doesn't matter if you're at a nonprofit or a for-profit. And so, I think a lot of what you all you've learned at Terry is, how are you going to drive results? Because at the end of the day, and how are you going to measure that? So I would say that for me, and when you're an accountant, everything is a process. And so I think that everything's a process and everything's measured. So I think having those types of business skills where you can really understand how any business works, and whether it's a hospital or whether it's Cousins Properties, you can go in and you can assess what makes this business work. And I think almost any business, there are a number of levers, not that many, but if you can figure out what are the 5 or 6 big levers, that if you stay focused on those, you're gonna get the result. I really think that's been, a big part of my success. I would say the other thing is, now, when I was an accountant, they didn't teach you much about appreciating people. It was all about the numbers, but you really have to focus on people and understanding people, respecting people, because at the end of the day, it's your ability. It's not what I do. I'm not there right now. There are thousands of kids in that hospital getting cared for. It's about you being able to put the right people in place and then supporting them and helping them achieve, do their job. So I think from any leader, if you are the type of leader, and my philosophy has always been, I'm going to find the best people I can, and they're going to be a lot better than I am at whatever I do. It will help you certainly be successful. In terms of how you recharge yourself, we see a lot of sad things, but we see so many amazing things, and that's what you have to stay focused on. You can't let yourself focus on the sad. I mean, it's like when you start to see Harrison's story, you're just like, oh my gosh. And then you see that kid at the end, and you see him at UGA with Kirby Smart. I mean, that was like the highlight of his life. And it's probably one of the highlights of Kirby Smart's year. I bet he would tell you, like, seeing that kid. So you have to stay focused on the positive. And you just can't, you can't let the negative become the primary thing that you see every day.
Hi Donna, thank you so much for being here today and for the incredible work that you do in our community. It's so inspiring. My name is Charlotte Boyd. I graduated in 2019 and am a member of the Young Alumni Board. My question for you, I love what you said at the end about that you can do everything, just not all at once. Something that I really struggle with as well in my life. Can you please speak to how you've been able to do everything, having this incredible career, but also having a family, showing up for yourself and being a friend, and how you've made all of that possible in your life?
The first thing I would say is, I don't know that I've done all that well, but you can't do all of that at the same time. So I can tell you there were so many times in my life where I felt like I was failing at everything. I was like, I'm not being a good mom. I'm certainly not being a good wife. Am I doing everything I need to do? I'm not talking to my friends. So I think it does really get back to give yourself that grace. There are going to be times in your life where you don't have as much time for your friends, or you don't have as much time to do things. And there may be extracurricular things you want to get involved in. You just won't be able to. So, people always ask me like this work-life balance. I'm like, it is different for every single person. And in my life, it has continually changed because your situation continually changes. So I think you just have to give yourself a lot of grace and kind of manage each of those sections. And don't feel like you have to keep up with everything, because that puts so much undue pressure on you.
Thank you.
Hi Donna, Akeem, class of 26. I was just about to quote kind of what the lady over there just did. So I'm going to skip that and just say, how would you prioritize, given what you said, how would you do prioritize, or do you have a framework for how you deal with not everything at once and being able to select what you do first?
Yeah, well, I think for me, I was always worried about, once you have kids, it was, am I doing the right thing for my kids? And, trying to balance your family and your job. I would say those were the two that I was always tussling with. And then kind of everything else had to, come after, after those two things. But I think it's really each individual has to come up with like, what are those big things? I don't know. I think even as a working mom, I look back and I'm like, did I spend enough time with my kids? Both of them tell me, they're like, we turned out okay. So, I hope that, but I just think you always have that pressure, whether you're a working mom or a working dad. I think you always worry about, am I spending enough time with my kids? And you do need to really spend time with them. What I would say is I wish I would have done more of this, because I can remember being so tired every night, but it goes back to read to them. Because when they're little, especially, their brains are just developing, and the more they just need to hear words, and it's going to help them so much, and you get that time together. So I would tell all of you, if you can, if you have children, spend as much time at night with them as you can, and make sure you read to them and help them, so it helps them grow. All right. Well, thank you all again so much for having me.